System 1 and System 2, the two modes of thinking. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort and no sense of voluntary control. System 2 allocates attention to the effortful mental activities that demand it, including complex computations. Dual process theory. Our minds operate using two distinct systems. System 1, which is fast, intuitive, and emotional, and System 2, which is slower, more deliberative, and logical. System 1 continuously generates impressions, feelings, and ideas without our conscious awareness. It's responsible for skills like driving a car on an empty road or recognizing emotions in facial expressions. System 2, on the other hand, is engaged when we perform complex mental tasks, like solving a difficult math problem or comparing two products for purchase. Cognitive load and ego depletion. While System 2 is more reliable, it's also mentally taxing and lazy. When faced with a difficult task, we often default to System 1's quick and dirty solutions. This tendency is exacerbated when we're under cognitive load or experiencing ego depletion, a state of reduced self-control after exerting willpower. Understanding these systems helps us recognize when we might be prone to errors in judgment and when to engage our more deliberative thinking processes. Heuristics and biases, mental shortcuts and their pitfalls. A general limitation of our mind is its imperfect ability to reconstruct past states of knowledge, or beliefs that have changed. Cognitive shortcuts. Heuristics are mental shortcuts that allow us to make quick judgments and decisions. While often useful, they can lead to systematic errors or biases. Some common heuristics include availability heuristic, judging the probability of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. Representativeness heuristic, judging the probability of something based on how closely it resembles our mental prototype. Affect heuristic, making decisions based on emotional reactions rather than careful analysis. Debiasing techniques. Awareness of these biases is the first step in mitigating their effects. Other strategies include seeking out disconfirming evidence, considering alternative explanations, using statistical thinking and base rates, employing decision-making frameworks, consulting with others to gain diverse perspectives. Overconfidence and the illusion of validity. The confidence that individuals have in their beliefs depends mostly on the quality of the story they can tell about what they see, even if they see little. Overestimating our abilities. Humans tend to be overconfident in their judgments and predictions, often failing to account for the role of chance and uncertainty. This overconfidence stems from our tendency to create coherent narratives from limited information and our inability to recognize the limits of our own knowledge. The planning fallacy. A specific manifestation of overconfidence is the planning fallacy, where we consistently underestimate the time, costs, and risks associated with future actions. To combat this, use the outside view by looking at similar past projects. Break down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable components. Build in buffer time and resources for unexpected setbacks. Regularly reassess and adjust plans as new information becomes available. Anchoring. The powerful influence of initial information. The anchoring index is a measure of the extent to which the anchor affects the estimate. An index of 100% would mean that the estimate is equal to the anchor, and an index of 0% would indicate no effect of the anchor. The anchoring effect. Anchoring occurs when an initial piece of information, often arbitrary, exerts a disproportionate influence on subsequent judgments and decisions. This effect is pervasive in many domains, including negotiations, pricing strategies, judicial decisions, performance evaluations. Mitigating anchoring. While difficult to eliminate entirely, strategies to reduce the impact of anchoring include actively generating alternative anchors, considering the full range of possible values, seeking out additional information before making judgments, being aware of potential anchors and questioning their relevance. Availability and affect. How emotions shape our judgments. The world in our heads is not a precise replica of reality. Our expectations about the frequency of events are distorted by the prevalence and emotional intensity of the messages to which we are exposed. Availability heuristic. We tend to judge the probability of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. This can lead to biased risk assessments, especially for vivid or emotionally charged events. Affect heuristic. Our emotional reactions often guide our judgments and decisions, sometimes at the expense of more rational considerations. This can manifest in several ways. Conflating the importance of an issue with how emotionally evocative it is. Making risk assessments based on feelings rather than statistics. Allowing current mood to influence unrelated judgments. To counteract these biases, seek out objective data and statistics. Consider multiple perspectives and time frames. Be aware of how current emotions might be influencing judgment. Prospect theory. Rethinking risk and decision making. Losses loom larger than gains. Loss aversion. People are generally more sensitive to losses than to equivalent gains. This asymmetry leads to risk aversion in the domain of gains and risk seeking in the domain of losses. For example, most people prefer a sure gain of $900 to a 90% chance of winning $1,000, but also prefer a 90% chance of losing $1,000 to a sure loss of $900. Reference points and framing. Our perception of outcomes as gains or losses depends on our reference point, which can be manipulated through framing. Key aspects of prospect theory include diminishing sensitivity to both gains and losses, overweighting of low probabilities and underweighting of high probabilities, the endowment effect, valuing what we own more highly than equivalent items we don't own. Implications for decision making. Be aware of how problems are framed and consider alternative perspectives. Focus on final states rather than gains or losses when possible. Use broad framing to aggregate multiple decisions and reduce the impact of loss aversion. Framing effects. The impact of context on choices. Different ways of presenting the same information often evoke different emotions. The power of presentation. The way information is presented can dramatically influence decisions, even when the underlying facts remain the same. Common framing effects include attribute framing, describing something as 90% fat-free vs. 10% fat. Risky choice framing, presenting options in terms of gains versus losses. Goal framing, emphasizing benefits of taking action versus costs of inaction. Implications and mitigation. Framing effects highlight the constructed nature of our preferences and the malleability of our choices. To make more consistent decisions. Reframe problems in multiple ways to gain different perspectives. Focus on absolute outcomes rather than relative changes. Be aware of how language and context might be influencing your perception. Seek out objective information and data to supplement framed presentations. Sunk costs and mental accounting. Irrational financial behavior. Mental accounts are a form of narrow framing. They keep things under control and manageable by a finite mind. Sunk cost fallacy. People often continue investing in failing projects or persisting with unpleasant experiences because of past investments, even when it's irrational to do so. This tendency stems from loss aversion and the desire to avoid admitting mistakes. Mental accounting. We tend to categorize and treat money differently based on its source, intended use, or how it's framed. This can lead to inconsistent decision making. Examples include treating found money differently from earned income, being more willing to spend from certain accounts than others, evaluating financial decisions in isolation rather than considering overall wealth. To improve financial decision making, focus on future costs and benefits, ignoring sunk costs. Adopt a broader view of finances, considering fungibility of money. Use budgeting and tracking tools to gain a more comprehensive financial picture. Regularly reassess financial goals and strategies. The focusing illusion. Overestimating the importance of what we're thinking about. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it. Attention and importance. We tend to overestimate the impact of whatever we're currently focusing on, whether it's a personal quality, a life event, or a product feature. This leads to poor predictions about future happiness and biased decision making. Mitigating the focusing illusion. Consider multiple factors that contribute to outcomes or well-being. Seek diverse perspectives and opinions. Use decision-making frameworks that encourage comprehensive evaluation. Practice mindfulness to become more aware of attentional biases. Delay important decisions to allow for a broader perspective to emerge. Choice architecture. Designing better decision environments. A choice architect has the responsibility for organizing the context in which people make decisions. Nudges and default options. The way choices are presented can significantly influence decisions without restricting freedom of choice. Effective choice architecture includes setting smart default options, providing feedback on decisions, structuring complex choices, creating incentives, using social norms, ethical considerations. While choice architecture can be used to promote better decisions, it raises questions about paternalism and manipulation. Key principles for ethical choice architecture include transparency about nudges and their intended effects, easy opt-out mechanisms, aligning nudges with the interests of those being influenced, regularly evaluating and adjusting choice architectures based on outcomes. By understanding and applying these principles, we can create environments that support better decision-making while respecting individual autonomy.